for paranormal investigation, you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on all this equipment. Start out simple, just use a digital camera. You never know what you're going to pick up. Or even the best tool is just use your own body. You'll pick up, electricity, goosebumps, the hair will stand up on your arms. So Trudy was taking a picture of the bike while this energy mist is going along. And it's an amazing photo. Again, I wish I brought it, because Ed, I'd love to get your opinion on this. She got an orb, bright blue, coming out of the bell at the front of the bicycle, and there's this magnificent energy trail flowing in behind it. Yeah, it's amazing. If it's a real orb photo, it's one of the best ones that I've ever seen. So, good job. So little David, he thinks that Trudy is his mother figure, and he's basically our adopted little ghost, because he's attached himself to her, he's followed us home, and we sort of adopted this little guy. But he's not the only thing that followed us home from the custom house. There's another story that in 1908, there was a social services agency called the Associated Charities of Hamilton, and they took over the custom house after the school had vacated. And it was a homeless shelter, basically. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with the geography of the Hamilton Bayfront, where the railway tracks are, where this custom house building is. But there's this very sheer, steep drop that goes straight down to the train tracks. And at this time, homeless men would ride the rails, hitching rides on the trains, looking for work. And so they would come in and they would stay at Custom House overnight from the social services. It became difficult just because of the geography. So what they did is they dug a tunnel from the basement of the Custom House down to where the train tracks are, so these guys could hunker up for the night. And one night there were 15 men coming through that tunnel, and the tunnel collapsed, and they were all killed. There are several who have made their presence known to us, again through EVPs, and the most prominent is a fellow named Jim. And again, Jim has attached himself to us as well. We know why little David has done it. We're still trying to figure out why Jim came home with us. And again, he's around all the time. He's not negative. When he does make his presence known, it's usually just to say hello. The TV will go crazy. Channels will change. One time, a book came flying off the shelf. Neither one of us actually saw it, but we heard it in two different parts of the house, and it came down. What was that? And interestingly enough, it was a book about ghosts that was thrown. And so we normally don't try to investigate our own home, but when this happened, we ran for the equipment, set it up, and we had our REM pod. And as I say, if something comes into contact with it, it will alarm. And you can use it to ask yes and no questions if you want to. For example, did you throw the book off the shelf? If the answer is yes, please make this light up. And so that's what we did, and we got into this little conversation trying to figure out who threw this book off the shelf, and we found out it's this fellow Jim, one of the homeless men from the tunnel in the custom house. Unfortunately, the custom house no longer allows any paranormal investigation to take place, which wasn't good for us because we did focus on the building pretty much entirely. So we got thinking, well, that door is now closed to us. What do we do now? Well, being from Hamilton, we thought, well, hey, the War of 1812 happened right in our backyard. Burlington Heights in Hamilton, Battle of Stony Creek. You got all of Niagara here. Fort George, Niagara on the Lake. You got Old Fort Erie just down the road here. Perfect. And so that's what we've been doing actually now the last couple of years, is focusing on the War of 1812 sites to see what kind of activity we can get. What's our time? 5 minutes. Okay, since we're running low on time, since I've been rambling on about the Custom House, let's go straight to the Old Angel Inn in Niagara on the Lake. And there's a story, some people say it's true, some people say it's not. There's a British officer that was killed by the American soldiers when they were ransacking the town when the British were in retreat from Fort George. And so we have done several investigations of the Angel Inn upstairs in what is considered to be the most haunted room. And you want to elaborate?
Well, we spent the night there. The first night we spent there, we bring all our equipment. We've got 2 rooms. So on the one bed, we set everything up and, leave it there. And we brought, as most people bring an American flag to antagonize the spirit, which I don't think is right. That's disrespectful. We brought a British flag. We laid it out, put everything around it, and that happened what's going to happen. The REM pod kept going off. That place didn't really get active until 1 in the morning when the place is actually closed and we are the only ones there. So we fall asleep, it's about 3 in the morning and there's banging going on there. It's all wooden floors and there's heavy wooden tables and you can hear dragging it and banging and making a lot of noise and banging up and down the stairs and oh my God, you know what I mean? And then when the next morning we go down to talk to check out, they're like, oh, did you have contact with Swayze? I'm like, we've had contact with somebody because that we told her what happened. She said, well, people tell them all the time they hear that. It is, I don't know who's doing it, maybe it's Swayze, but you know what, he never bothered us because we respected him. We didn't get a voice, but we heard footsteps. We had left, when we got there, we went downstairs to get some dinner. We left out a digital recorder. Why not? And while we were down there, we had footsteps on the wooden floor. So he was there. And then we were coming back, and first thing you do is you lock the door. We turn around and you hear him unlock it and lock it again. It was, in my opinion, just making sure we're okay, safe in the room.
The latch did not move at the same time, but there was the distinct sound of that lock engaging a second time after we had locked it.
Yeah.
And what we think is it was Captain Swayze or whatever ghost was there, making sure that we were safe inside the room. Because when we were there, it was the anniversary of when Niagara on the Lake was burned by the Americans before they retreated back across the river to Fort Niagara. And so the energy at that time was just phenomenal. I think it was something like maybe 2 buildings that actually survived out of the whole town. So absolutely amazing. We've had right here at Old Fort Erie, not a lot of hard physical evidence, but feelings. As they say, use your body if you can. There was one of the reenactments that they hold every year we went to, and you could, after the battle, the reenactment, we went upstairs into the soldiers' barracks, and you could just feel the energy. You walked up those stairs, it was just like walking into a wall of negative energy.
For one, they took down the British flag and put up an Italian flag. The French flag.
It wasn't the actual War of 1812 reenactment. It was Napoleonic War
Yeah.
reenactment. And they had a French flag flying over the fort, just for authenticity of the reenactment.
And they had French soldiers.
And yeah, some of the reenactors
Yeah.
that were with the French, they were actually French.
Yeah.
They came over from France to participate in this reenactment. And you could just feel that the spirits there at Fort Erie were not happy. Because at the time leading up to the War of 1812, depends on who you ask. A lot of people say that the War of 1812 was actually a follow-through of the Napoleonic Wars. And so it makes sense. It makes sense. Again, quickly, Fort George, we've had many successes there. There's there's a little girl. Somehow the children seem to gravitate towards Trudy. The main spirit there is a little girl. Her name is Sarah Ann. We've gotten EVPs of her. She mostly makes her presence known during the summer when they do their local ghost tours of the fort. And her story is part of the stories that are told. And we were in there, we had an investigation made one time, and we contacted Sarah Ann, and we kept getting these EVPs that said, story. And it's a little girl's voice. And again, there's no little girls there while we're investigating. It's a story. And it was little Sarah Ann wanting to hear the stories that she's so familiar with.
And we were talking about her. We were talking her story, and then she come through and said the story. I think she just wanted to hear more. She likes being acknowledged.
And just to continue with that, there's another fort in Niagara on the Lakes called Fort Mississauga. And it's right down by the golf course. And this fort was built after Fort George had been destroyed, and it was designed to be Fort George's replacement, and built down by the golf course farther away so that it was actually out of range of the cannons over at Fort Niagara. And today, if you've never been there, very little remains. There's the main tower, and then there are a couple of the old powder magazines. And I went into one of these powder magazines, and I got the creepiest EVP. And this was the first time I'd ever gotten one with an accent. Everything else had either been Canadian or American accents. This one was a British accent, and it's just the creepiest sounding thing. You walked in there, and it says, "Who's there?" And it just sent chills. Just sent chills. I guess our time is up. There's other locations I could talk about, but I guess that'll have to wait until next time. So, thank you, everyone.